But look who is here. We have a special guest, the man of the hour, the newest head coach of the Texas Stars. Let that sink in. Toby Petersen joining us live from his soon-to-be vacated home in Colorado, I think. We'll see how quickly that goes. Toby, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm actually going to let Sean ask the first question. So, Sean, have at it.
Yeah, first off, Toby, thanks for coming on with us. I think you and I ran into each other at a press box in Colorado 6 or 7 months ago, mid-season, I think, at one point. So good to see you here. And just to kind of start off with the Texas job, what stood out? I just wanted to kind of start there of why the Texas job interested you to kind of go after it. It's something where you had coached in the AHL before, you were working in skill development with the Avalanche. You obviously have been, when you talked tonight before, there was no eager interest to leave Colorado from last time I talked. So why was this the Texas job the right thing for you to go after for yourself in the first place?
Yeah, I like you said, I've spent 6 years, building up prospects in other organizations with Buffalo and Columbus in the past, and obviously being with Colorado the last few years, you get a pretty good feel for where organizations are at. And Dallas does one thing. I mean, they do a lot of things very well, but one thing they do incredibly well is they develop talent. This is one of the most coveted jobs as a result of that. They win hockey games because they're so good at developing. And so that's what stood out to me as like a big time attraction for this opportunity.
Go ahead, Luds.
Hey, Petey, you mentioned developing talent. I've always had, I think we can go back to last year with this organization that you're now part of. The team in the minors is playing their system however they want to play. My question or my comment, my thought, my wish is that why don't more teams, and I don't, maybe you will this year, maybe it changes. Why don't you guys play a little bit more like the parent team does, right? And so that when a player gets called up, you can kind of plug them out, plug them in. There was times last year when, whether it was Petro or whoever came up, it seemed like it took a little bit of time to adjust to what DeBoer was doing. So do you still have, is there any of that dialogue that goes back and forth? We'd like you to kind of develop or play the way that we do, or are you on your own to play whatever kind of style you like with your players?
I think it's a bit of a hybrid, but I do think that there will be a lot of things will be streamlined in the organization is my feeling. These discussions still need to take place. Obviously, we'll sit down with Coach Gulletson and his staff and make sure our staff, make sure we're all on the same page. But you're absolutely correct in that, when guys get called up, especially their first call up, second call up, there's a lot on their plate. There's a lot going through their minds, and you want guys to be able to go out there and just perform and not have to overthink. So I think there's some merit to what you're saying, especially, forecheck, D-zone coverage, those types of things, the things that stand out constantly in games. You want to make sure that, you're all on the same page and they have experience running what Dallas is running, so that when they get up there, they can just perform. They can just go out there and just play and do a little bit less thinking and just kind of read and react as they go along. The one exception obviously is going to be, you do have to play to your team's strengths and weaknesses a little bit. So power play, penalty kill, you're going to, that's where, I get the feeling, especially power play, you've got to play to the strengths and weaknesses of your team.
Toby, you did an interview with Steven Meserve, who does a great job covering the Texas Stars for 100 Degree Hockey. And it was wonderful to read, but I really loved some of your comments, obviously. But part of it was you talked about Willie, our old head coach back in 2012 through 2014 with the Texas Stars, Willie Desjardins, and about building up all year long. You talked about it, and I think you combined that with what Jared Bednar did with you guys in Lake Erie when you were in your second year as an assistant coach in the AHL, and you won 2 Calder Cups because of it. Why is it so important to develop the habits that you've had, whether as a player when you were in the NHL, playing in the AHL, or as a coach throughout the year, and not try to flip a switch when the playoffs start?
I think it's hard to flip that switch. Teams that try to do it usually struggle. Like if you go through the regular season, you're winning a lot of games, but you're cheating the play a little bit.
Lutz is already applauding.
Yeah, it's hard to flip the switch. So you might have a high scoring, a high powered offensive attack that allows you to win games. You might have just a killer power play that's causing you to win more games than maybe you should. but it's hard to flip that switch. So I think it's important. I don't expect a rookie to come in and on day one and have playoff habits immediately, but that's what our job is as coaches. Our support staff in Austin and in Cedar Park, our job is to make sure these guys understand what playoff hockey players look like. Because really, if you got a playoff hockey player, that's a winning hockey player. That's what you're looking to. Those are the habits you're trying to develop immediately. So I think it's important, and something Willie did a good job of, and Coach Bednar did a great job of, is they recognize it immediately and they kind of nip it in the bud before it becomes an issue. So, if a player is turning away from a clearly open contact opportunity, you just wait for him to get back to the bench and just remind him we finished that hit so that we're winning the race back up the ice, whatever it is. Like, there's a million opportunities or a million different circumstances where that shows, but we want to build playoff hockey players, and it starts from day one.
What is with the AHL job, and it's something that I'm sure your view on this and figuring out this, you went from playing with a Texas team that won a championship and playing with some good AHL teams to coaching with some teams that have won. Obviously, we know there's the wall on the line in the Texas locker room that says we win here, right? Because we know there's some AHL teams where there is not as much of an emphasis on winning games. As you've kind of formed your view of how the AHL is run and how you're going to do your job, what is the balance of development and winning and finding and hitting that kind of perfect gray area? Because it's not simple black and white like it is coaching at other levels.
That's a great question. It's one of the hardest ones to answer, but for me, it's development first. Winning will come. Like, my favorite piece of literature, favorite book I've read is Bill Walsh's "The Score Will Take Care of Itself," and he's all about the process. And it ends up, obviously he won a few games. It's safe to say, won some Super Bowls, built a dynasty in San Francisco with his process, which was simply doing the right things every day, and not just on the ice, but out of in the locker room, away from your house. He was trying to build perfection, knowing he wasn't always going to land on perfection, but he was going to be more prepared and have the guys playing the right way more often than their opponents, which is going to lead to a big advantage. So for me, it's development. Even the old guys, like something I was told as an older player, one of my exit meetings was, Toby, you don't make a lot of big epic mistakes. So you kind of slip through the cracks a little bit, because we had other guys we were always worried about. We didn't do enough individual meetings with you. It's not that they were like, it's not that you played bad. It's like, I just feel like there's little meat left on the bone is kind of what they're getting at. So for me as a coach, like, I remember that, and I want to make sure that the older players on the team, the Curtis McKenzie's or whoever ends up being there as the older players, they're getting the same level of attention for their habits as the brand new player that's coming into the organization for the first time or coming into the league for the first time.
PD, Owen mentioned Gully, you mentioned Willie. You've also had Dave Tippett, you'd had Crawford. Is of all those guys and people that you've been under or worked with, is there anybody that you kind of pattern yourself after? Because it used to be a little bit more hard ass back in the day, or you just kind of go about it and say, I'm my own guy and here's what I'm doing.
That's a great question, Luddy. The guys that kind of popped to mind, you take a little bit from each one of them. I was only with Tip for a little bit, but obviously, like, he had a winning pedigree. He knew how to win hockey games. He knew how to get.
Well, he's from North Dakota, Petey. It's a UND guy. So
that helps. Yeah, that obviously helps. But I learned a lot from Tip. I learned a lot from all of them. And they'll be the first to admit it's not always going to be good. It's sometimes you learn from the mistakes. But Willie was a big one as far as like building the team, building the culture. He from like immediately when he walked in, before he even took the job, I'd been with him when he was the associate in Dallas, and he had kind of come to me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking of going to Austin. Sounds like you might be on your way." So we kind of. He laid out his plan early on in the process and followed through with it right away with the leadership. So, he's a big one for the team building. Jared Bednar, same thing. Like, there's just, the thing I take from him is there's no gimmicks. Like, you have to outwork, outperform, and out execute your opponents. And obviously it helps to have a lot of talent, to do that. But he's won a lot of hockey games at every level. And it's just his focus on details and paying attention to the flow of the game and making sure that, they're dictating the play more than the other team is able to dictate to them. So those would probably be, off the top of my head, my two biggest influences. But I'm talking like going back to Pee-wees, Bantams. Like, I've had coaches that have just done an incredible job. Bloomington Jefferson, I got to give a shout out to them. We won a lot of hockey games in Bloomington back in the day. And it was with, it starts with really good coaching, teaching discipline from an early age. And, that carried through and provided a lot of great college and NHL players.
So Sean sent me a link this morning, and I believe it was a video of you winning your third straight Minnesota high school hockey championship with Jefferson. And I believe that you took the final face-off of that video where you guys got to celebrate. And it's insane because we all know what Minnesota high school hockey is like. But then you sit there and it was, you know, it was in the mid 90s or early to mid 90s. And you're looking at that going, this NHL building is shaking to the rafters for a high school hockey game, which is just, I imagine that playing in something like that is really, really unique.
It is. I mean, we were very fortunate. I was on the final of the three teams. My brother was on all three, so him and a couple of his buddies were on all three of those teams. But yeah, won 3 straight. His middle year, the year before I got there, they went undefeated, which doesn't seem like much, but it's pretty tough competition around there. But you know, like I said, I just feel fortunate that I was able to have that opportunity to play at, you know, then it was the Civic Center, now it's at XL or Grand Casino, whatever it's called soon. But you know, you just feel fortunate that at such a young age, I was 14 years old and the place was sold out and the crowd was roaring and everyone was cheering against us. So pretty early on, you get to learn how to play in a pretty hostile environment. You learn a lot as a young kid doing that. But you know, it's a great setup. It's the only thing that we equate to, and it's probably on a smaller scale, but it really is Texas high school football. Like that's the closest I can get to finding a comparable, you know, sport around the country. It's Minnesota high school hockey is huge, and it's held strong despite all the changes going on in, you know, around the rest of the leagues with everything going on. They still maintain a strong base and great viewership and everything. And the state tournament is, you know, it's the crown jewel of their season.
Hey, Sean, before you jump in real quick, I just have to ask a Minnesota Twin Cities native. For people that don't know, the naming rights is changing for the Minnesota Wild building. It's no longer XL Energy Center. Actually, I think technically not till September. But everybody up there calls it the X, right? So how long is it going to take to stop calling it the X?
This is a question for me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, you're the Minnesota native.
I think, yeah, I was home in Minnesota last week. Sorry, I misunderstood the beginning. I was in Minnesota last week, and already I was hearing people coming up with their ideas. You know, there's tons of opportunity to make a new name, to shorten it. Obviously, the G or the big G, whatever. Like, there's a million opportunities to play with that, you know, the new naming or the new name that's going to accompany the arena, but it won't take long is what I'm saying.
All right, Sean, go ahead.
And then, so kind of connecting us back to Texas here, you compared Minnesota high school hockey to Texas football. So let's to the job you're stepping into right now. Obviously, you're stepping into a role with two guys who on your staff that you know really well, that you played with, you won a championship with. What's the conversation been like with Max and Travis, and kind of getting ready to work with them now in a coach's room after having played together before and you guys' past history?
I mean, for myself, it's a lot of excitement. I know those guys really well. We've kept in touch over the years. I know what they're, you know, I know the type of players they are. I know the type of character they are or they have. So that's obviously huge. I don't have to worry about them putting in the work. And obviously the job they've done as a team and the job that Texas Stars have done over the last several years speaks for itself. So these guys are producing winners. They're producing NHL caliber talent. And, you know, a little bit of it is just get in there, get to know these guys in the process, maybe tweak a couple things. You know, going back to Luddy's question there, like the influence from the coaches, like it is important though that we kind of create our own path. You know, the three of us kind of stick to what we do best and make sure that we're all, you know, sticking to what we do best. Not trying to be something we're not, because we all know players can sniff that out pretty quick. You got to be genuine. And I think if we do that with the range of skills the three of us have, and, you know, really the all five of the coaching staff there, like if we just stick to our skills, I think we're going to produce a lot of exciting games, a lot of wins.